Alright guys, it is Miss Lambert and I want to read Resistance with you. So, for those of you that follow my YouTube channel, I know it's not many, but I'm going to read this book a little bit differently than how I normally read books. In this book, The Resistance, you guys in 6th grade have already been studying the Holocaust. You have started with looking at Europe, history, government, that kind of thing. And we're starting chapter 1 after you've had a chance to do some other activities with Mr. Colson to kind of build that background knowledge that you have for the Holocaust. We are going to read in the story the protagonist, and you guys already know from Miss Bryant's class that the protagonist is the main character in the story. So the protagonist in this book, her name is Kaya Linder, and we're going to follow her adventure through the Holocaust. I'm not even sure that we can call it an adventure, but that's what we're going to call it right now. So the main thing that I'm doing while I read this story is I want to model my thinking. I want to kind of draw that picture for you, and I want to set a good example of what you should actually be doing when you're reading stories. So let's go ahead. I want you guys to join me because you have your books. Now, I want you to join me in part 1. I am on page 1, chapter 1. And the reason I want you to follow along with me while I'm reading, there's actually scientific evidence that shows your reading can improve if you're following along while someone is reading aloud. So we want to make sure that you are staying with me throughout these chapters and that you are following along. Okay, so it's October 5th, 1942, and we're in Tarnow Ghetto, southern Poland. So 2 minutes. That's how long I had to get past this Nazi. He needed time to check my papers, inquire about my business inside the ghetto. Maybe he wanted a few seconds to flirt with my pretty Polish girl, or for her to flirt back. But no more than 2 minutes. Any longer and he might realize my papers are forged. That's it. Jewish blood in my veins, no matter how Aryan I look. So pause right there. You guys have already done some background knowledge here, so you know right now what it means to be Aryan. So she is Jewish, but she doesn't have the classic Jewish look. And you guys should know, but at this point in your background studies, that the Holocaust was nothing more than the Nazis. Hitler, he wanted to completely wipe out the entire Jewish population, like there be no more of them. Okay, so she's trying to get past a Nazi soldier, but I just wanted to point out so you guys do know. And ghetto is not the same term that we would call it today. So you know from your vocabulary that you've already done that ghetto was the most run down parts of cities that they blocked off, and they would put the Jewish citizens there. They actually took over the Jewish homes and they moved them to these places. A lot of them did not have electricity, they did not have heat, they did not have running water, they did not have access to the basic things that they needed. Because again, the Nazis didn't care if they froze to death, they didn't care if they starved to death. So, Guten Morgen. This one greeted me with a smile and a hand on my arm. I learned early not to smuggle anything inside the sleeves of my coat. You only had to be stupid once, and the game was over. This officer was younger than most, which I once believed would give me an advantage. I thought the younger ones would be more naive, and maybe they were, but they were also ambitious, eager to prove themselves, and fully aware that capturing someone like me could earn them an early promotion. Guten Morgen, I replied in German, but with a perfect Polish accent. I smiled again like we were old friends, like I wasn't as willing to kill him as he was my people. Vetskits. I didn't care how he was doing on this morning or any other, but I asked him because it kept his attention on my face rather than my bag. Like other ghettos throughout Poland, Tarnow Ghetto had been sealed since nearly the beginning of the war, cut off from the outside world, cut off from Jews and other ghettos This isolation gave total power to the German invaders, power to control, to lie, and to kill. For the past 3 months, I'd worked as a courier for a resistance movement known as Akiva. My job was to break through that isolation, to warn people and to help them survive if I could. But we were increasingly aware that time was running out. We'd seen people being lured onto the trains with promises of bread and jam, pacified into thinking they were being relocated to labor camps. Then they were crammed into cattle cars without water or space to move, and their destination was never a labor camp. They were headed for the death camps, designed to kill hundreds and even thousands of people a day. I'd seen them, been sickened by them, had my heart shattered by them. The Nazis called these camps their solution to the Jewish problem. Now, you guys already know through your studies that you did, through your gallery walk and your web quest, that when they were talking about the Jewish problem, their solution, what they called the Jewish problem, and their solution to it was just completely wipe them out. And so we already know that they would load these people up. They would tell them, you can come work for us and you'll be free and nothing will happen to you and we have food and everything. But it was a complete lie. They would pack them into these cattle cars, some of them so tight that they couldn't even move for days, stuck in the same position, couldn't go to the bathroom, couldn't eat, couldn't breathe. Some of them suffocated to death before they even got to the death camp. So it was not a good thing for her to see. Yes, I very much intended to be their problem, which required me to stay calm. Adjust my light a little bit, guys. Nope. Just inside the ghetto, I saw an open square that used to be a park. Now it was a place for trading, for begging, for a population with little more to do than wander about and wonder when their end would come. Maybe some even wished for it. As was generally the case at the gates, there was one other Nazi on duty, this time a man in an SS uniform, the more specialized military force. There were also 2 Polish police officers and 2 members of the Jewish police, whom we called the OD. They often were as brutal as the Gestapo, and no more trustworthy. I offered the soldier my Karte before he could ask, because he'd need to see the identification anyway, and my 2 minutes were halfway up. The passport-sized bifold contained my picture and fingerprints. Everything else inside, the dates, the stamps, the personal information, was forged. One of our leaders, Shimshon Dragner, did all the forgeries for Akiva. He was so talented, I believed he could forge Hitler's signature and fool Hitler himself with it. We sold Shimshon's forged papers inside the ghettos as our way of funding the resistance. You are Helena Novak? The soldier asked. I nodded, a lie that I'd told many times over the last 3 months, and one that I would certainly tell again. 1,000 other Polish girls might have the same name, which was the plan. If all went well, he'd believe me, and then, in the same instance, forget me. Why are you coming to the Tarnow ghetto today? He asked in German. I scrunched my face into a pout, a careful balance between hitting that I wish I could go on a picnic with him instead, but not enough to actually encourage him to invite me. I replied, Shows for the women. Winter is coming. I can make money in there. He frowned. Where do you get these shawls? My grandmother knits them. My grandmother, whom I recently smuggled into hiding with a Christian family in Krakow. She sews, cooks, and cleans for them. In exchange, they don't have her killed. They saw it as a fair bargain, and maybe it was. If they were caught, they'd be killed too. So, guys, if you remember through your studies, okay, a lot of people did not help the Jewish community because if you were caught helping someone that was Jewish, you would receive the same punishment. And they didn't realize that if at the time they had actually stood up for what was right, they would have outnumbered the Nazis. I know you saw on one of your posters that what the Nazis did was just as bad as those who kept silent about what was happening, because if they had not kept silent, if they had stood up for what was right, then it probably would not have reached the extent that it did. Let me see your bag, the officer said. It was worn on my back and was narrow and deep, deliberately sewn that way. I had packed the top half of the bag tightly, making it difficult for him to dig around if he felt the need to do so. But I hoped he wouldn't, because today the thick shawls hid the potatoes I was smuggling in, along with some forged identification papers. For sneaking in a single potato, this Nazi could shoot me here on my feet. For the papers, my punishment would be far worse. I turned and hummed a little tune while he looked the bag over. This was by far the most dangerous part of my mission. If I'd raised his suspicion, if he wanted to impress his commander, if he looked at me and saw the Jewish girl inside, the one who has trained herself to look these evil men in the eye and to smile and make them think I sympathize with their slaughter of my people, if he saw that, it was all over. But I'd get in today, and tomorrow I would lie my way into another ghetto and do the same every tomorrow after that until my last breath or theirs. After 3 years of war in which I'd felt helpless against the overwhelming force of the German army, I was finally doing something. I was bringing my people a chance to survive. So inside her bag, she's got it packed full, full, full. But up under all those scarves, she's sneaking in potatoes because there's not any food inside the ghetto. Remember, they don't care if the Jewish people starve or not. They don't care what they have, and they keep them isolated from it. Ghettos themselves were nothing new to the Jews. Many times throughout our history, we've been forcibly segregated, often behind walls, which made it harder to get people to listen now. They believed the German lie that if we cooperated, we would get through this, as we had in the past. They wanted the ghettos to be what they'd always been, a separation and nothing more. But it was different this time. The German plan was not to divide us from the population. It was to eliminate us from the population, to exterminate us. The ghettos played a key role in their plan, suspending the Jews in a halfway point to everything, half starved, treated as much like animals as humans, existing halfway between hope and despair, halfway between life and death. The one became the other in the ghettos. And I was doing everything I could to stop it. It began with smuggling. I'd become creative about how I brought things in, weapons baked into loaves of bread, fake identification papers sewn into the linings of my coat, or occasionally the smuggled object might make my bust appear larger than it really was. Whatever I was secretly carrying, I always brought information to the residents of these sealed ghettos about what was happening elsewhere, and then learned everything I could to warn the next ghetto. And that was only the beginning. My mission today was bolder than usual, and I was nervous. You must leave before the ghetto curfew at 1700 hours, the Nazi told me, and then with a smile added, Come out through this gate, pretty girl. No? Oh, I offered him a smile of my own, one that shot bile into my throat. I couldn't come out this gate now, not if he was specifically watching for me. He let me pass, and then I was in. I wondered if he'd sensed how hard my heart was beating back there. If he'd known my palms were dampened with sweat. I'd talked my way past the soldier by making him think I was Polish. Now came the harder part, convincing my own people that I was one of them. For if they did not trust me, coming here was a waste of time. I turned down the nearest street, hoping to get out of sight if any guards looked back. It was time to be Jewish again. I put the necklace with the Catholic crucifix in my pocket and repeated my true name under my breath, Kaya Linder. I was named for my grandmother, as she was named for hers, and every time I passed off as a Christian girl named Helena, I wondered, was I dishonoring my name or preserving it? Maybe it didn't matter. I was committed to my fate. I'd be a courier for as long as a courier was needed. I'd be a fighter if that was needed. If a martyr was needed, I'd be that too. But for now, this ghetto needed to see a Jewish girl. If it was difficult to pass myself off as a Pole back at the ghetto gates, it was no easier now to make the people here trust me as a Jew. I was a stranger with a Polish look, and that made me suspicious. So, before the ghettos, guys, the reason they're suspicious of the Polish people because they're not Nazis, they're Polish. Polish and Jewish people used to live together in communities, and they were friends and worked together and had jobs together and ate together, and their children played together. But when the Nazis started taking over areas and they were going to completely wipe out the Jewish population, the Polish people turned their back on their friends and neighbors because they didn't want to get punished as well. So the Jewish people have a hard time trusting Polish people as well. Polish person would turn in a Jewish person just to save their family. I was supposed to make contact with the resistance member here, but until he found me, I began distributing potatoes. Like everything else, I passed them out as quietly as possible. I didn't want to be recognized or remembered, even among my own people. There were some who might point me out to a Nazi if they thought it'd buy their family another day to live. So whenever possible, I distributed food to children, slipping a potato into their bag or coat pocket and then quickly moving on. I sometimes looked back to see their eyes light up when they felt it with their hands, but they were always smart enough not to bring the potato out in the open. Too excited to look around for me. Usually, I didn't look back. It wasn't worth the risk. I moved fast, eyes down, trying not to think about who got the potato and who'd I'd passed over. They didn't deserve hunger more than the child whose bag happened to be open. But such was the randomness of life. I would never be able to bring in enough food for everyone. At my best, I could not save them all. That thought always destroyed me. Always. Far too soon, the supply of potatoes was gone. So what if 20 families had a potato to eat tonight? Couldn't I have snuck in even one more? I lowered my eyes and clutched my bag in my hands. I couldn't give out the shawls, no matter how cold it was about to become. I needed them for the second part of my mission, but I had to find my contact soon. The German invaders had taken everything from me, my home, my family, even much of my faith, which had once been the center of my life. So I had no problem taking something back from them, my dignity, my fight, my will to live. But if I'd learned anything from this war, it's that we can never go back. So, guys, Kaya is, we're kind of jumping into the middle of her adventure. We don't have her backstory yet, but it is coming. Okay, so right now she has snuck into a ghetto and she has passed out potatoes, and she kind of feels bad about, you know, the potatoes that she was not able to give to everybody because she can't feed everybody in the ghetto. There were families, 3 or 4 families would be packed into one apartment, you know, no bigger than my house, 1 bedroom, bath. There's no water, there's no plumbing, there's no heat, and they're just packed into these apartments, and all of their belongings were thrown away. So, you know, it's kind of hard for Kaya. But she passed out who she could, and she feels guilty about that. She said that's going to haunt her because she couldn't feed everybody. But come back for the next video whenever Coach Colson hits it up into the Google Classroom, and we're going to do chapter 2, guys. So I know you're going to love this story, and we're working on some exciting things, and you are going to know this era of social studies once we get through this. All right? Happy reading, guys.